There is one question that has now been spoken out loud, on camera, in front of millions of people, and it just changed everything we thought we understood about this entire saga. Here it is. How do you love somebody who went on a live stream and said that you tried to set him up to have him killed? That is not a rumor. That is not a comment section conspiracy. That question was put directly to Chrisean Rock by Jason Lee in the middle of the most raw, most emotional sit-down of her entire career. And the reason it cuts so deep is the man she is talking about. The man who allegedly said she tried to have him set up is Blueface, the father of her son. Now here is the part that should genuinely break your brain. After everything he has said about her, after every live, after every accusation, she still pulled up on him. She still sat in a room with him. She still looked him in the eye. So the real question was never what he said. The real question is why she stayed. And y'all, the answer is a whole lot deeper than you think. Now, let me catch everybody up real quick, because this story in 2026 is not the same story it was in 2023. Chrisean Rock has spent the last year trying to completely rebuild her life in public. She stepped into professional boxing. They branded her holy hands. And back in April, she fought her first sanctioned bout in Philadelphia. She got knocked down in that fight. She got back up, and she won a split decision over Zenith Zion. One of those nights where the whole building held its breath. A few months earlier, Blueface walked out of a California prison after serving 21 months of a 4-year sentence. And Chrisean went online and called his early release an answered prayer. That is where this story starts. A woman who says she prayed for her child's father to come home. And a man who came home and apparently went straight back to the most dangerous accusation he has ever made against her. So when Jason Lee sat down with Chrisean for this interview, the stakes were not small. Jason Lee has built an entire brand on these conversations, the sit-downs where the questions are not soft, where he leans forward and asks the thing everybody else is scared to ask, and where he switches between host and big brother from one sentence to the next. For Chrisean, this was supposed to be the victory lap interview, the clean one, the one where she talks about the boxing, the sobriety, the faith, the new chapter. And for a while, that is exactly what it was. She walked in looking like somebody who had finally gotten her life together. She talked about the discipline, the training, the way she is trying to show her son a different life. And you could see people in the audience rooting for her, because everybody loves a comeback story. But then Jason Lee did what Jason Lee does. He leaned in. And he asked her about Blueface. Not the surface version, the deep version. The version that starts with the worst thing that has ever been said about her on a public platform. And this is where I need everybody to really understand what is being alleged here, because I do not think people are sitting with the weight of it. This is not he said. She said about who cheated. This is not about money. This is not about an argument at a party. The accusation that Jason Lee put in front of Chrisean is that Blueface went on a live stream and said that she tried to set him up to have him killed. Think about that sentence for a second. Somebody who is allegedly saying that the mother of his child conspired to have him murdered. That is the kind of allegation that, if it were true, would put somebody in a courtroom for the rest of their life. And if it is not true, it is the kind of allegation that should end any relationship, any co-parenting arrangement, any reason to ever stand in the same room again. There is no middle ground here. Either she tried to have him killed, or he said she did. And both of those things are nuclear. Before I go any further, I need to put something on the table that a lot of the coverage of this interview has been dancing around, and it is the thing that makes Jason Lee's question land 10 times harder than people realize. The accusation that Blueface made on that live stream did not come from nowhere, and it did not exist in a vacuum. It landed inside a story that already involved a murder investigation. I need to be very careful with my words here, because there are court matters and investigations involved, and I am not a lawyer, and I am not about to present speculation as fact. What I can tell you is what has been reported. Reports connected an investigation to the death of the man who was the father of Chrisean's son, a man named Ronnie. There has been public back and forth about that. Blueface has talked about it online. Chrisean has denied any involvement. And out of that fog of war, Blueface went live and reportedly said that Chrisean tried to set him up to have him killed. Do you understand how deep that cuts now? This is not a man who is mad about a text message. This is a man who is allegedly saying the mother of his child conspired with the system to take his life. And he is saying it to millions of people while she is on another platform trying to sell the world a redemption story. That is the context Jason Lee was operating in, and that is why his question was so surgical. He was not asking about a breakup. He was asking about the worst thing one human being can say about another, and Chrisean's answer was basically, he is lying. So I pulled up. He said, so why would you pull up? And then he made it personal. Jason Lee understood that, and that is why he framed the question the way he did. He did not say, are you two dating again? He did not say, do you still talk? He said, how do you love somebody who goes on live and says that you tried to set him up to have him killed? How do you understand the craziness in all of that? And then, when she tried to explain, Jason Lee kept pushing. He said, well, why would he pull up if that is the truth? And before she could answer, he flipped it. No, not why would he pull up. Why would you let him pull up? I am talking about you. That is the moment the whole interview changed, because Jason Lee was not letting her hide behind Blueface behavior anymore. He was putting the mirror directly in front of her. You heard what he said about you. You know what he claimed. So why would you let that man back into your space, into your energy, into your life? And Chrisean's answer, and I want everybody to hear this, was essentially, because he is just lying. And Jason Lee, quick as ever, said, so why would you pull up and hang out with a liar? That exchange right there is the entire saga in 30 seconds. Because Chrisean's answer to everything, and this has been true for years now, is that Blueface is lying, that he is in his feelings, that he is doing it for attention. And maybe that is true. Honestly, it probably is true. Blueface has said a lot of things over the years that fell apart the second the receipts came out. But here is the thing, and Jason Lee said it better than I ever could. Even if he is lying, why are you still showing up? Why are you still hanging out? Why is the man who publicly accused you of trying to set him up to be killed still welcome in your orbit? You do not hang out with your accuser. You do not go to the house of the man who said you tried to have him murdered. And the fact that she could not answer that, and instead just kept saying he is lying, he is lying, he is lying, tells you everything about the pattern that she still cannot break. She said it herself, over and over, that this is something she is struggling with, that she has told Jason Lee multiple times. And Jason Lee's response was the truth she did not want to hear. You cannot keep blaming the fame, and you cannot keep blaming the audience. And that is the part of this interview that I think is going to be clipped, reposted, and talked about for months, because it cuts through every excuse Chrisean Rock has ever used. For years, the narrative has been that she is under a microscope, that everybody is watching her, that she cannot breathe without somebody judging her. And there is some truth to that. She is one of the most watched women on the internet, and the scrutiny she lives under is real. But Jason Lee was doing something different. He was saying, okay, you are under a microscope. So what? That does not explain why you keep walking back into the fire. That does not explain why you let the same man who accused you of trying to have him killed keep showing up. People backslide, Jason Lee said. People go this way, they go that way. But that does not mean the audience is the problem. That does not mean the fame is the problem. At some point, the problem is the choices, and the choices belong to one person. And I think that is the moment where you could see Chrisean actually feel it, because for once, somebody on a platform was not attacking her, was not making fun of her, was not calling her crazy. Jason Lee was talking to her like a friend who was exhausted by her excuses. And that is way harder to dodge than an enemy. Now, before I get into everything that happened after this, I want to pause right here and ask y'all something, because this is the part where I need your verdict. Do you believe Chrisean when she says Blueface is just lying, just doing it for clout, just being messy? Or do you think there is something she is not telling us about why she keeps letting him around her and around their son? I want y'all to be honest in the comments, because I genuinely think this is the question the whole internet has been dancing around for years. And I will tell you where I land a little later in this video, so make sure you stay with me, because the next part of this interview is where things really start moving. Because from that moment on, the conversation did not stay on Blueface. It moved somewhere even more personal. Jason Lee started talking to Chrisean about God, and not in the shallow way celebrities talk about God when they are trying to rebrand. He went straight to the deep end. You are going to church, he told her, but you are not obeying God. I said you are going to church, but you are not obeying God. Church does not work if you do not obey God. And then he laid it out line by line. This only works if what God tells you, you step out on. This does not work because you shout hallelujah. This does not work because you show up dressed in your Sunday best. And y'all, that is one of the most honest things I have ever heard said to a celebrity in a public interview. because it is so easy to look spiritual when you are in crisis. You post the scriptures, you wear the cross, you cry in the church pew, and everybody claps. But Jason Lee was saying the quiet part out loud. The performance of faith is not faith. The rebrand is not the transformation. And she, to her credit, did not argue with him. She just sat there and kept saying she is crying out to God to help her through these hard times. And you could hear the exhaustion in her voice. She is crying out to God, and she is still in the same storm. And that is where the tears came. It happened fast. Jason Lee asked her one of those simple questions that somehow hits harder than all the complicated ones. He asked her what she wants people who may have been wrong about her to know. And she said, "Just give me time. Be patient with me. Do not count me out." And then Jason Lee said the thing that made her eyes fill up. "Yeah, I do not think anybody is counting you out." And she said, "No, they are not. Yeah, they are not." And then, in the middle of her trying to hold it together, Jason Lee looked at her and said, "Do not get emotional now, because here come the tears. Do you feel like people are counting you out?" And that is when Chrisean said the line that is going to be on every reaction channel for the next month. "No, they are rooting for me. And I feel like I am not showing up how I should be. But they can see the growth. They see the potential." And Jason Lee, because he is a master of these moments, asked the follow-up that cut through everything. "Okay, but do you see it though? Do you see it in yourself?" And Chrisean paused and said, "Yes, I do." And that, right there, is the entire emotional core of this interview. And I want to sit with that word, tears, for a minute, because people keep asking me whether she was really crying or whether it was another performance, and I think the question itself is missing the point. By the time Jason Lee got to the emotional part of the interview, she had already been cornered 3 or 4 times. She had been asked why she keeps letting a man who accused her of trying to set him up to be killed back into her orbit, and she had given the same answer 3 times. "He is lying. He is lying. He is lying." And every time she said it, you could hear her believe it less. That is what exhaustion sounds like. That is what it sounds like when the story you have been telling yourself finally starts to crack under the weight of one really good question. And I think that is why the tears came when they did. They did not come when Jason Lee was harsh. They came when he was kind. They came when he said he does not think anybody is counting her out, because somewhere in the back of her mind, she is counting herself out and being told the opposite by somebody who just spent an hour refusing to let her lie to herself is the most dangerous kind of kindness, the kind that actually gets through. And whether she walks out of that room and actually does the work, or whether she walks out and pulls up on him by Friday, the conversation itself did something. It told her, and it told everybody watching, that the standard is not surviving, and the standard is not performing, and the standard is not the rebrand. The standard is being willing to live the life you claim you want, and that is the standard she measured herself against out loud, on camera, with tears in her eyes. Now, here is where the internet splits in half, and I need y'all to understand both sides before you come for me in the comments. There is a very loud group of people who watched those tears and said, "Here she goes again, the performance, the act, the clout chasing, the whole thing." And there is another group who watched the same tears and said, "That is a young woman who is genuinely drowning, and everyone keeps throwing rocks at her instead of a life jacket." I have seen this debate play out in every comment section, on every platform, and honestly, both sides have evidence. Chrisean Rock has given people reasons to be skeptical. There have been moments that looked like performance. There have been rebrands that collapsed. There have been lives and fights and videos that made people throw their hands up. But there have also been genuine moments, and I think this interview was full of them, moments where you could see somebody fighting for her own life in real time. And here is the thing about Jason Lee's questioning that I think people are missing. He was not mocking her. He was not performing outrage for the algorithm. He kept saying, "I am talking to you now as a friend." And whether you believe that or not, he asked the questions that a real friend would ask, not the questions that get views, the questions that get answers. And that brings me to the commentary that has been circling this interview, because you know the internet was not going to let this moment pass without adding its own voice. There is a whole school of thought out there that says Rock cannot be helped, that she takes no accountability, that every time the truth is put in front of her she deflects it, that she refuses to embrace the truth, and that anybody trying to save her is wasting their time. And look, I get the frustration behind that take, because we have watched the pattern for years now. We have watched the cycle repeat so many times that people are exhausted. But I want to push back on one thing, because I think the take is half right and half lazy. The part that is right is that accountability matters. Chrisean has made choices, and those choices have consequences, and no amount of trauma explains away every decision she has made as an adult. The part that is lazy is the conclusion, because if you really believe nobody can be helped, then you have just given up on somebody. And that is a weird thing to build a whole personality around. Y'all can be honest with each other. Half the people commenting on Chrisean's chaos are not actually concerned about accountability. They are entertained. And that is fine to admit, because that is exactly what this entire ecosystem is built on. But here is the part of the conversation that I think is going to age the worst for Chrisean, and I say that as somebody who is genuinely rooting for her. One of the moments that has been clipped and replayed a million times is the segment where she is remembering the song she wrote when she and Joey Badass first started dating. She said it came together fast, only a couple of takes. And then she started singing it right there on camera, and it immediately went viral. The song goes, "Fate comes on time, fiendin' for you. This I cannot deny, love me some you. I know I would be crazy if I did not choose you." And y'all, the way she sang it, eyes closed, feeling every word, you did not need a translator to understand what that moment meant. That is a woman singing about a time when she felt chosen. And the reason that clip hit so hard is the context around it. When Chrisean and Joey Badass were linked, everybody saw it. Joey is one of those artists who has a whole fan base of women, a certified ladies' man. And there she was, the one he picked, and the way she talked about it back then, you could hear how much it meant to her. She loved the fact that all the other women wanted him, and she had him. She said it with her whole chest. That is not a judgment, by the way. That is just human nature. There is something in all of us that wants to win. But when you build your whole sense of worth on winning a man that everybody else wants, you are building on sand. Because the moment Joey does not act like you won, the whole thing crumbles. And that is exactly where the story went. The way Chrisean tells it, when she realized Joey was not falling for the games, when Joey was not giving in the way she expected after the baby came, that is when she went back to the streets, and by streets, I mean she went back to the cycle, back to the chaos, back to the familiar. And I want to be really careful here, because I am not here to call anybody names, and I am not here to drag Joey Badass into a paternity conversation, because there is no proof of any of that, and I am not about to spread speculation as fact. What I am saying is the pattern, and the pattern is textbook. When a person believes their value comes from being chosen, they will keep chasing situations where they get to feel chosen, even when those situations are toxic. And that is the thing that connects the Joey Badass era to the Blueface era and to everything after. It was never really about the man. It was about the feeling of winning, the feeling of being the one. And when you are chasing that feeling, you will walk into rooms you should not walk into, and you will stay in rooms you should have left years ago. Now, the other clip from this whole saga that has the internet in a chokehold is the one where Blueface is doing what he does best, which is coaching, and I use that word loosely. There is a moment where Blueface is putting her through what he thinks is a logic test, and it actually exposes something much deeper than either of them realizes. He asked her about the man who was around their son, the man who had been with her and the baby in the car. He asked her, "Do you know him?" And she said she does not know him. Then he asked, "Do you know how old he is?" "No." "Do you know his full government name?" And she finally said John Jackson. Then he asked, "Do you know his date of birth?" And Chrisean said, "Oh, hell no." And Blueface made the point of points without even realizing he was making it. He said, "So if you were to make a police report, you would not be able to tell them anything." And everybody laughed at that moment, because Blueface was being Blueface, condescending and messy, but underneath the mess, that question was actually about the most important thing in the whole saga, which is the safety of that baby. And that is the uncomfortable truth of this entire story. Blueface of all people, the same Blueface who has said the most unhinged things imaginable about the mother of his child, stumbled into the one question that actually matters. Do you know who is around your child? Do you know anything about the people holding your baby? And the answer, from both of them across years of chaos, has often been no. And listen, I know it is uncomfortable to give Blueface credit for anything, because Blueface has a long history of being the villain of his own story. But this is where I have to be fair, because the interview and the clips around it keep pointing at one thing that neither of them wants to fully face. Chrisean has been criticized for who she lets around her son, and Blueface has been criticized for everything from denying paternity to the way he talks about Junior online. And through all of it, the person who has no voice in any of this is the child. That little boy is going to grow up and Google his parents. That little boy is going to see his father on a live stream accusing his mother of trying to set his father up to be killed. That little boy is going to see his mother crying on camera, saying, "Do not count me out." And neither of those memories belongs to him. They belong to the world, because his parents built their entire relationship in public. And I say this as a commentator, not as a judge. Somebody has to be the adult, and right now, the only adult in this situation is the one who cannot speak yet. The other thing this interview did, and I know I am jumping around a little, but that is how this saga works. The other thing it did was reopen the whole conversation about the rotating cast of characters around Blueface since he got out. Because while she was on this stage being asked to get real, Blueface was back home running his own circus. There is the new girlfriend, Nevaeh, who is pregnant, and who has gotten into it with Chrisean publicly more than once. There was the whole baby disabler thing, where Nevaeh allegedly called Chrisean that on a live stream, and she responded by saying God has the final say. There was the street fight that had the internet in a frenzy, where she was caught on camera fighting a woman connected to that whole situation, reportedly right outside a baby shower. There was the story about police being called to Blueface's home after he allegedly pushed Nevaeh and her son into a pool. And through all of it, the same pattern keeps playing like a song on repeat. The man creates chaos, the women orbit the chaos, and the internet watches. And I need y'all to hear me on this, because I am not blaming anybody for being manipulated by a master manipulator. Blueface has been doing this to people for a decade. But at some point, you have to ask yourself why you keep buying a ticket to the same train wreck. And that brings me to the new man in Chrisean's life. Because yes, there is a new man, and yes, the internet has opinions. She has been linked to Hood Trophy Bino, and they made things official in a way that felt designed to be photographed, showing up together at a church service, which, given everything we just watched, is a choice. Bino has gone as far as to claim Chrisean's son as his own during a live stream, saying he is going to teach the boy things, defending the relationship with his whole chest. And part of me wants to root for that, because everybody deserves somebody who claims them loudly. But another part of me, the part that has watched this saga for years, is sitting here like, okay, but is this growth? Or is this the same pattern wearing a new jersey? Because the pattern was never really about Blueface specifically. The pattern is choosing men who come with chaos attached, and Bino, for all his good intentions, became a lightning rod the second he got with Chrisean. And that is not his fault, and it is not even really her fault. It is the ecosystem. When you are one of the most watched people on the internet, every relationship you have becomes content, and every partner you choose becomes a character in a show you did not sign up to star in. Now, let me talk about the boxing thing, because I actually think it matters, and I do not think people give it the respect it deserves. Chrisean Rock, Holy Hands, has been training like her life depends on it, because, honestly, it might. She went into professional boxing at a moment when her personal life was in complete shambles, and she used the chaos as fuel. Her first sanctioned fight, she got dropped, and she got back up, and she won. That is not nothing. That is the kind of story sports movies are made of. And she has talked about the sobriety journey, the discipline, the way she is trying to protect her peace, and I believe her. And I also believe that it is fragile, because you cannot rebuild a life in a vacuum. You cannot train every day and still let the same broken people into your orbit and expect the training to save you. The ring is the one place in her life where the rules are clear, and that is exactly why she loves it. In the ring, you know who is trying to hurt you, and they are right in front of you, and you are allowed to hit back. In her real life, the people who hurt her most are the ones she keeps letting in the front door, and she cannot figure out why it keeps happening. And I think that is the thing Jason Lee was circling the whole interview. Chrisean knows how to fight. She has never learned how to leave. And here is the bigger question that this whole saga keeps forcing us to ask, and it is not about Chrisean, and it is not about Blueface. It is about us, the audience, and the machine that has been built around their pain. Because let us be real with each other. This is a spectacle, and we are all watching it, and the algorithm is feeding it to us, and the commentary channels are covering it, and the reaction channels are reacting to the reaction channels. Chrisean's chaos is content. Blueface's lives are content. The tears, the fights, the the court dates, the redemption arcs, it is all content. And there is nothing wrong with entertainment, and I am literally making a video about this right now, so I am not above it. But there is something worth sitting with here. When a person's trauma becomes your Tuesday night entertainment, you are part of the system that keeps the cycle going. Not because you are a bad person, but because your views are fuel, and the people in the middle of the storm are paid in attention, and attention is the most addictive currency on earth. Every time they go live, they get paid. Every time they fight, they trend. Every time they cry, they get engagement. And then everybody acts shocked when they keep performing. The system does not reward healing. The system rewards drama. And until the day the audience stops rewarding the drama is not going to stop. So where does that leave us? And more importantly, where does that leave Chrisean Rock? Because I think there is a real answer buried in this interview. And it is the answer that nobody wants to hear because it is not dramatic enough. The answer is time. Jason Lee asked her what she wanted people to know, and she said, "Give me time, be patient with me, do not count me out." And for all the eye-rolling that moment got, I actually think she meant it. But here is the thing about time, and this is where I land on the question I asked y'all earlier. Time only works if you actually use it. You cannot ask for patience while you are still running the same place. You cannot say, "Do not count me out," while you are still showing up to the house of the man who accused you of trying to set him up to be killed. You cannot cry out to God for hard times while you keep walking back into the fire and calling it faith. The rebrand is real only when the behavior changes, and the behavior has not changed yet. That is not me counting her out. That is me watching with my eyes open. And honestly, that is what rooting for somebody actually looks like. It is not blindly clapping. It is holding them to the standard you know they are capable of. And I want to say one more thing about Blueface before I wrap this up, because I know a lot of y'all are waiting for me to just pile on him. And believe me, the pile is deserved. Blueface came home from prison and immediately went back to the exact same behavior that sent him there. The lives, the accusations, the chaos, the new baby mama drama, the whole thing. He has publicly denied being the father of Chrisean's son, then flipped it again, depending on which platform he was on and which audience he was performing for. He has made jokes about the mother of his child on live streams while his child's mother is on a stage being asked if she tried to have him killed. And through all of it, the thing that never changes is that he is the common denominator. Every woman in this saga deserves better than what Blueface has given them, and I will say that as loudly as I have said anything in this video. But here is the uncomfortable part, and I already touched on it. Blueface can be a terrible person, and she can still have work to do. Those two things are both true at the same time. His wrong does not erase her part, and her part does not excuse his wrong. That is the whole story, and it has always been the whole story. And I want to talk about that upbringing for a second, because I think it is the missing piece of every analysis of this saga, and it is the piece that Jason Lee keeps trying to get to without saying it directly. Chrisean has talked openly about a childhood that most of us cannot imagine. She has talked about the absence, the instability, the violence, the fact that she was raised in an environment where love and chaos got wired together in the same circuit. And when a person learns, at 5 years old, that the people who are supposed to protect you are also the people who hurt you, that wiring does not go away because you get famous. It goes with you into every relationship. It makes you allergic to peace, because peace feels like abandonment, and chaos feels like home, and you will burn down every safe thing you build just to get back to the feeling you know. And I am not a psychologist, and I am not diagnosing anybody, but I have watched enough of these stories to recognize the shape of it. The reason Chrisean keeps pulling up is not because she is stupid. It is because pulling up is what the wiring tells her to do. The reason she cried in that interview is not because she is manipulative. It is because she is exhausted, and exhaustion is what the wiring looks like when it finally meets somebody brave enough to ask the right questions. And that is the real tragedy at the center of this whole saga, and I want to say it as plainly as I can. Chrisean Rock is a master at surviving, and she has never once had to learn how to live. In the streets, in the chaos, in the fights, in the rides, she is untouchable. Give her a crisis and she will rise to it, every single time. The boxing ring proved that when she got dropped and got back up and won. The sobriety proved it when she chose to fight for her own mind. But a crisis is not a life, and surviving is not the same thing as thriving. And the moment the crisis is over, the moment things get quiet, she does not know what to do with her hands. And that is why she keeps manufacturing the storm. That is why the live streams keep getting wild. That is why the polls keep happening. Because the storm is the only weather she knows how to move in. Jason Lee asked her why she keeps getting in the mess, and the honest answer, the one she could not say on camera, is that the mess is the only place where she knows who she is. And until she can sit in the quiet without running, without calling, without pulling up, none of the outside changes are going to hold. And here is the question that nobody in this whole saga wants to answer, because it has no clean side. What would actually have to change for this to be over? And I do not mean for the internet to stop watching, because the internet is never going to stop watching, but for Chrisean to actually be free of the cycle. And I will tell you what I think, and I think it is the same thing Jason Lee was circling with every question. The change is not a new man. It is not a new fight. It is not a new ring name. It is not a new live stream where she talks about her growth. The change is a full stop, a season of silence, a period where the answer to every pull-up, every call, every provocation, every piece of live bait is the same word, no, and where no becomes so boring that the cameras finally turn away. And the cruelest part is that the machine around her is not built for that outcome. A quiet Chrisean is not content. A healed Chrisean is not a story. Nobody is going to pay for a documentary about a woman who went to therapy and lived peacefully, and she knows that, and that knowledge is the trap she has been living in. The machine pays her to stay broken, and the audience claps when she performs her healing, and the only way out is to be willing to be boring, and boring is the one thing she has never once been able to stand. So here is my final verdict, and y'all can fight me in the comments if you want, but I am not going to change my mind. I believe Chrisean's tears were real, and I also believe they will not be enough. I believe the boxing is real, and I also believe the ring cannot save her from her own phone. I believe she loves that little boy more than anything on this earth, and I also believe that love, by itself, is not protection. And I believe Blueface is a master of taking the worst possible interpretation of any situation and broadcasting it to the world, and I also believe that he is going to keep doing it for as long as people keep watching him do it. The only open question, the only one that actually matters, is what she does next, not in an interview, not on a live stream, not in a comment section, but in the quiet moments when nobody is watching. Does she go back to the house of the man who accused her of trying to have him killed? Or does she finally understand what Jason Lee was really asking her the whole time? Which was not why does he keep doing this, but why do you keep letting him? And that is the question I want to leave y'all with, because it is the question this whole saga comes down to, and it will decide whether this story is a tragedy that keeps repeating or a comeback that actually lands. Do you think Rock is really done with that cycle for good? Or do you think it is only a matter of time before she pulls up on him again? Be honest, because I read every single comment, and I want to see where this room stands. And if you made it this far, drop a comment with the word patience if you are rooting for her, or drop the word done if you think she already lost the plot, and let us see which side the algorithm agrees with. Keep your eyes on this story, because with these two, the next chapter is always one live stream away. That's the tea, y'all. Catch you in the next one.